It's the potty-mouth safe space for balancing daddy duties and creative careers. Let's get into it with artists, creatives, and business pros that have similar hardships and victories in fatherhood. It's the Creative Dad Pod, hosted by 5-time Emmy-winning videographer, documentarian, and one-time daddy, Adrian Huerta. On this episode of the Creative Dad Pod, we are visiting hat maker, world traveler, Mezcal ambassador, culture curator, and social media influencer Gilbert Marquez. Through this current Mexican-American renaissance of art, culture, and marketing, Gilbert expresses that fine line of Chicano tradition and the cultural progression through his very successful family-owned Pachuco Supply hats and brand. Sure, the business might have over 136,000 Instagram followers and 16K plus on his personal account, but I think the most important thing is he finds a way to still be an active father and husband. Please welcome to the podcast, life partner of Cynthia and creative dad to Frida, Gilbert Marquez.
Hey.
What's up, dude? We're finally getting this done.
Yes.
It's been a while, but I mean, I watch you. I've been watching you on social. You've grown numbers wise. And I finally get to meet you. We did Cantina de Pachuco.
Yeah, Cantina Pachuco.
At Altura.
Yeah.
And we appreciate you doing that. It was cool. I honestly think it was probably the most successful activation that we had.
Wow.
But I also get to meet your wife and your daughter, and it was as hard as you worked to make that event happen. I got firsthand experience of you being a dad and you being a partner. And I thought it was super sweet, and I thought it was awesome, man.
That's awesome. Thank you. That's a great compliment. Just been following Altura and yourself through all you're doing, and to know that this activation was successful in your eyes is, for me, the goal, right? We wanted to do something to showcase a culture that otherwise doesn't get showcased in this fashion, which an art gallery. And we brought a band to play norteños, and it's pretty great.
It was sick.
Cool.
I mean, it was beautiful.
Yeah.
But like I said, your wife is a part of your business.
Yeah.
So she was going to be there.
Yeah.
Whether she was a part of it or not, but also your daughter was there.
Yeah.
Who is Frida and who is Cynthia?
Cynthia is my life partner, my wife. She is my motivation for everything that I do. She has been super supportive. We share an ego. We want to make sure that we are both doing great, and I think that that's important. Just for me, when I first met Cynthia, I know people say this a lot, but I walked up and she doesn't smoke anymore, but she was smoking a cigarette at the time. And I was like, not for the cigarette, right? But something about the badassness attitude. I was like, I'm going to marry her. And
Right away, super quick. You just knew.
Yeah. And Frida came later, a surprise to both of us, because we were always the folks that were like, we're not going to have kids. Right. We're going to travel and we're going to do all these things. And I don't want to have kids. And when I found out Cynthia was pregnant with Frida, I was super relieved. She called me into the room and said, Gilbert, we need to talk. And I was like,
Something's up.
Yeah.
You know something.
¿Qué hice, cabrón? What did I do? And she's like, I'm pregnant. I'm like, yes, thank God. One, and then two, yeah, this seems right. And then so the normal things that couples go through is like, is this what we want to do? What are our options and all that? And for me, I felt like I was ready to have a family and wanted to have a family. And then so...
What age are you at this point? What age are you when you find out that...
how old am I now? I'm 26.
Yeah, you look great for 26.
No.
That wig.
Yeah.
Wonders for you.
They're plugs.
Yeah.
About 33 years old.
Okay.
chronologically, I am really bad, like just knowing what year certain things happened. But Frida was born in 2019, 3 years old, and yeah, there was something about her telling me that Frida is going to be born that really everything clicked. Yeah, this is what I want to do. I want to be a dad. And she gave birth to little Frida, and Frida is a creative, outgoing yet cautious and observant, the love of my life, little baby. And I always say that she's 3 going on 16.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, those kids, I don't think we give them enough credit, right? With how fast they learn, how fast they evolve and develop their own personality. But the idea that you're going 3 to 16 is pretty accurate.
Yeah.
You hear all the stories of like how much and how fast these kids grow up, and it's true though. Do you hate it? Do you hate how fast it goes?
Yes. Because being a creative, you're always working. We have this small company, this small family-owned company that it's not one of those jobs where it's like, should I go into work today? Is there anything for me to a huevo? There's always something to do. There's no reason to even ask. So the time melting away as you're trying to build something for her, as I'm trying to build something for her and our family, the time is melting away. It's going away, and I can never get it back. And you see the stuff on social media, like those little clips of, Bluey playing in the background, the toys on the floor. You just don't get that twice. I mean, not with the same child. And so, yeah, I don't enjoy that. But I don't know. Are we paying it forward to, means to what end, right? Always. And so to the end of just making sure that she has a great life, whatever that means.
You, as much as you want to give to her, and it seems like you love being around this kid, you're also not around as much as you would like.
Yeah.
There's a sacrifice. How do you balance that out? And I mean, do you have any resentment to it? I mean, you're saying it's going by so fast, but you're also trying to, I guess, support a child. It's a weird, it's give and take, right?
Yeah, it's such a sacrifice, and there is a resentment that builds up, and I find myself, because I'm not perfect, letting that show to family and into my wife, and we would always know, relationship wise, that there's a big long trip coming up, because my temper's shorter, and it's just not enough time at home, and that if you don't check yourself, can be damaging to the relationship. And so that's what I'm constantly trying to do, is like, I'm not mad at we're late to this dinner reservation. I'm upset because this is the last dinner that we're going to have before I go on this big trip. That's why I'm upset, because I want to be around you. And so checking that, I think, is important.
That's amazing that you're able to understand what you're mad at. You're still mad, right? And unfortunately, it comes out at the worst times. But the first opportunity that you can be mad, you take it, right? Because I think it's unfortunately healthier to get it out.
Yeah.
But that's amazing that you're able to find what you're mad about. Because sometimes people don't understand that, and they just kind of keep rolling with the negativity.
Yeah.
They never figure it out.
Yeah.
But I think when you do figure it out, then you can kind of sort of stop yourself before it happens.
Yeah.
But maybe it's the idea that you're moving too fast. There's not enough time, between leaving here and going to the family space, and there's enough time to separate.
Yeah.
It kind of just bleeds over.
Yeah.
The difficulties of fatherhood, I think a lot of people don't know about. Did you know how hard it was going to be? Did you have an idea? You're ready. It seems like you're ready for the happy parts. You're like, I'm ready to have a kid. I'm ready, but are you ready to lose sleep? Are you ready to change diapers when you should be somewhere else? It's a life change, right? It's a lifestyle change.
One of my best friends, John Rexer, one time in Oaxaca during a trip for Ilegal, told me, I was upset. I was going through a breakup, and I was like, you know what? Like, I'm not gonna have kids. I'm not gonna have a family. I'm just gonna focus on myself. And John checked me, and he said, "Don't lie to yourself. I see you. I see how important family is to you, and I think that you would be a great dad." Later on, in maybe a year or two later, he said, "You should have a kid." I'm like, "Why do you say that?" He said, "Well, I want to be a godfather." This is what he said. And then also, you don't take life so seriously. You're not so serious that you're not going to be an enjoyable father. You're going to be a good father. And after that conversation is when I found out that Cynthia was pregnant, and everything kind of clicked. But
it's almost like you knew.
Yeah. And maybe you did. I don't know. If I would have asked my Mexican aunt, she would have been like, "Oh no, he knew." And the sun was this way,
right?
And the moon was that way. And her belly was pointing this way.
Right.
It's a girl.
It's lower, where it sits. Yeah.
Science.
Yeah. Thanks, Thea.
Yeah. She was never wrong. So many things that you don't know. I would come into my kitchen when I was a kid, and I would see my dad, just sitting there like this, and I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know what it was. And in my opinion, my father was a good man, or a good dad, to me, and to my siblings, I believe. Now I know what he was stressed out about. And it's that saying that you hear and read on social media. It's like, what is it? Being a parent is hard for good parents, right? And so he was stressing himself out because he wanted to give us everything. He didn't go to cantinas, he wasn't absent.
Right.
He was there as much as possible. Right. But when he wasn't there, le estaba chingando. He was working.
Right.
He was working. And so that was one of the things that now I realize. I'm like, and I try to, tell, my nephews, I'm like, one of these days you're going to understand why I'm telling you this.
You do speak of your nephews, who kind of sort of you've taken under your wing. We've had this conversation before this podcast. Set up that situation. My question for you though is, do you think you can take that load on with what you do? I mean, you're a busy guy, like Pachuco Supply, Ilegal, other ventures in social media, family man, one daughter, a wife. You live in Orange County. Everything's in Los Angeles. There's a lot going on with you.
Yeah.
Do you have the capability to take that on?
On paper, no.
Yeah. I mean, even me saying it, I'm like, this is exhausting.
Yeah. On paper, no, but my heart says yes. Right? My brain says no.
Right.
So my sister is a single mother to some teenagers, 16, that age. And they don't have as much of a fatherly presence from their father for whatever reasons, and that's not for me to know, I guess. But I do see the opportunity for them to go down the wrong road. Mm-hmm. And I would rather sacrifice my free time, my money, and my emotions, and trying to make sure that they don't go down those roads. It is a lot, and it's very difficult, and no, I don't have the bandwidth necessarily to do it in the full capacity, but we always talk about planting seeds, and I was very lucky to have older folks in my life that planted seeds that at the time, there's, you got to learn from my mistakes. Don't do this, don't do that. Nah, those guys aren't your friends. As soon as things get rough, they're gonna, whatever it is, right? And so I didn't listen to my father or my uncles or older people in my life. At the time, I was like, but I wasn't listening to them, but I heard them, and it absorbed, and they planted a seed in me. And so now I look back at those lessons, and so I talk to my nephews, and I say, you don't have to love what I'm saying, just hear me, and poco poquito, I'm trying.
Right. So are there certain lessons that I guess do you think there's a difference between, like, raising a girl that's yours, but also helping boys, masculinity? There's those aspects that you understand, but then also there's your daughter on the other end. Are you taking and giving anything away from either one? And I mean, what are the differences?
Yeah, I think inherently I may be a little bit more, a little rougher with the boys, but there is a roughness too that has to happen with my daughter, and so I acknowledge, I know that, and I try. Pero como papá, ves a tu hijita, you're like, how am I going to be rough to her?
Right.
But it has to happen, right? You have to set her up for the world.
Well, I mean, how do you do that as a girl dad? Where?
Well, I don't know, but I know it's. I know I'm gonna try, but I don't know. I guess teaching her that physical beauty isn't everything, and that goes for both. That goes for children in general. They should know that their value is other things that they bring to the table. And I guess there has to be subtle ways, I'm sure, in raising. But so I was watching this cartoon, it's Bill Burr's cartoon.
Oh yeah.
And it was just, it's like this cartoon that was set up in the setting is the 1970s, and he was talking to his son, and put your head through the wall, yelling at his son, which is, it's not great, not the way you raise your kids, but it's satire, I guess, or comedy. And then his daughter walks in, and he's like, "Hi, princess." I guess sometimes that happens with fathers. I'm doing my best to not raise a princess in that way, but I just want to raise a strong human. I
mean, I think you need that in this world, right?
Yeah.
But also there's different ways of doing it than the way that you're brought up, right? Things come up now.
There has to be.
Yeah, right. I mean, in our day, we're similar in age. There's the idea of, physical discipline. There's, throwing people out of the house. There's, stuff that we would probably say no to now.
Yeah.
Right. But it's a weird balance, right? Like with Antonio, he's about 16 months, right? And every time he gets hurt, it's weird. It's almost like he wants to cry if he gets hurt, but it's almost like he's fighting it, right? And I don't know where he gets that from, which is interesting, because whenever it happens, I tell him, if it hurts, man, just let it out. Cry. It's okay. It's not a problem. Before, it would be, for us, it'd be like, no, you're fine. You're fine. Like automatically somebody would tell you, you're fine.
Yeah.
You're fine. You're fine. You're fine.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's almost like I personally don't want to do that. I want him to know, like, dude, don't bottle that up. If it hurts, it hurts, whether it's physical or your feelings or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, he's also 16 months and,
Yeah, and he should cry when it hurts, whatever it may be. And I remember before I was a father, having my nephew in the backseat of the car, and I was rolling up the window, and he smashed his fingers on the window, and he grabbed his hands and he looked at me and was scared to cry. Oh. And I pulled over and I told him, "Mijo, it's okay to cry if it hurts. It's okay. You don't have to be scared of crying around me." With that, there are also Frida's emotions are obviously valid, and when she's angry at me, I let her know that it's okay for her to be angry at me, and try to explain to her why she's not getting what she wants or whatever it is. It's usually just a popsicle or something, but letting her know that it's okay for her to be angry at me, because I want her to express her emotions to me, and I guess planting those little seeds now is important for me.
Is that different than the way you were brought up? I mean,
yes.
Okay.
Yes, it was. My mother is so giving. She is so giving, her time, her energy, but also was raised by her sister, who would teach her certain ways of correcting behavior. Te va a llevar ese señor, that man is going to take you away if you don't calm down. Ahí viene la policía. I'm going to call the cops on you. Those things. And so she would repeat those things to me. And my father was going through he's battling his own traumas, demons with his family. His mother threw him out at a very young age from his house. And I don't think he had a really good relationship, though he tried to mend it in his later years. Looking back now, I know that the way that they raised me, obviously, I feel like I'm doing pretty good, but also it wasn't ideal. But looking at it, I know they were going through their own traumas and battling those traumas, and I don't think that they raised me in a way that I guess they could have with all of that trauma. They could have been way worse, I think. But yeah, not ideal, right, by any means.
So, I mean, talking about your dad, fatherhood itself, this business is kind of sort of comes from your dad. Right?
Yeah.
It's an ode to your father.
Yeah.
Who was your dad? And do you think you're doing a good job with Pachuco Supply in ode to your dad?
Yeah, I think we're doing a good job to the best of our abilities. My vision for the company has always been a way of expressing myself, ourself, through this art form, which I would consider a Chicano art, a subcategory of Chicano art, I guess you could say. And so I think we're doing a good job. My father was also named Gilbert, or Gilberto, and he was a drug addict in his younger years. How could he not be? He had no love. He had no one to, when your mom gives you piojitos, lays you down on the couch and does it, the best feeling in the world.
Right.
To my knowledge, he didn't have that, and he was thrown out at a young age. and lived on the streets and grew up, you know, on the streets. And so how, you know, what else was he going to end up doing, you know, but eventually falling into drugs, started a pretty bad heroin addiction, in and out of prison his whole life, most of his life, his young life. When my sister was born, he became a born-again Christian and sobered up, dropped heroin that day, and did the best job that he could possibly do. I don't have too many memories of my dad being expressive with his love, and I find myself sometimes being dry, but trying to break that down.
I would have never guessed that you were dry. I mean, but maybe that's just the job and the marketing and the ambassadorship that you do. I think with the idea of like Pachuco and Chicano and the original zoot suits, that whole thing that is involved with your brand, there's hardships that come with it, right? Like that originality. But it almost seems like when it's almost like a tribute. I think what you're doing, I feel like, is a tribute to this. But it almost seems like it's. I mean, there's popularity within this style wise.
Yeah.
I mean, you're doing hats for, you know, Madonna, my faux tia, Dolores Huerta, you know, big names. And for art and creativity, do you think that Chicanoism is going through a renaissance right now? It almost seems like it's coming back, but it's not what it once was, right? There aren't a lot of, there are hardships. There's always hardships involved, but I grew up with it. We all grew up with it, around in it. Do you think that there's a renaissance right now happening creatively with Chicanos?
I believe so. Chicanismo has always been, in my opinion, about turning a negative into a positive. Rascochismo.
I think you're the personification of it, by the way.
Thank you. I try to be. Though I posted something on social media and I asked people, what does rascuache mean to you? And our folks that are from Mexico, rascuache is a bad thing. But we know for a Chicano, you probably growing up in the Southwest, could be a positive thing. Upcycling, right? That's what it is. Yep. So turning nothing into something less than ideal, into something positive. And I think that positivity is coming from that hardship now. A lot of attention, a lot of folks reaching out to small businesses, family-owned businesses like ours, brown-owned businesses. So we're starting to see some of the positivity in that resilience of trying to survive, trying to keep Chicano art alive, though it's never gone anywhere because it's specificity and longevity in art.
Well, social media helps with that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I have access to seeing what people are doing in Phoenix, in Albuquerque, in Chicago, New York, San Antonio, back home, you know, and it kind of brings people together, right? It's almost like, oh wait, I'm not alone. I can still do this. We can still do this. We can still put it out there. We can put our own spin on it, or just respect it, you know? Yeah. For me as a photographer, videographer, documenting it is probably one of my favorite things. I don't post it because it's just not something I'm like, it's a fine line, and you walk it very well.
Thank you.
Brown man, Chicano, identify as Chicano, but not necessarily owner of a lowrider, and you know, dressing and going through those hardships. But the idea of respecting and knowing that this is a part of us, it's kind of sort of nice to kind of go and highlight it a little bit.
My father went through those hardships. My father was had a lowrider, had lowriders, went through all. It was in prison. I was a fighter, a boxer, and he went through those hardships, and now because he guided me in such a way, letting me know that I don't have to do those negative things to survive, giving me a better life, a better lifestyle. Now I'm able to do things that I think he would be proud of, but also are a reflection of growing up in that sort of household that was clawing its way out of the negativity and wanting to do something more, trying to shake off the negative portions of that upbringing and really just shine a spotlight on the beauty of it.
And to kind of follow up with the hardships, those aspects that your father goes through, but turning it into something beautiful. I mean, there are hardships, but there's art in there. There's creativity in there. Isn't that the whole idea of upcycling, right? Isn't that a lowrider? Isn't that, your bench that I've seen on Instagram that's made of, old pallets, it's kind of just part of the culture, but also it's the hardships that come with the idea that you can't have anything new. We don't have the means. We don't have the money. We need to pay our bills. Fine. It doesn't mean that we can't have nice things.
Yeah. We can't have something new, but we can have something nice. That's what a lowrider is. A lowrider is turning off the factory car American sedan into a beautiful piece of art. It's what Chicano Park is, turning that overpass. What is it? Is it overpass, right?
Yeah.
Into those pillars into beautiful pieces of art. It's turning that park into something that was, just dry and sterile.
Well, you thought you were hiding people under there, and no, nobody's going to come down here.
Yeah.
They got art, dude. They have ideas. They have spirit, and it shows. Like, it doesn't matter what you give us.
Yeah,
we're gonna put it out there regardless.
Yeah, that's Rascochismo, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get it done. That's one of the things that I really got from my parents is like that attitude of like, I'm gonna get it done. Watch me. But
I thought it was just
isn't that like, isn't that a beautiful form of Mexican American Spanish?
Yeah,
or even Spanish. We know what it means.
Yeah.
But what if? Yep.
Or the chingadera.
Yeah.
Right. We know. It's just general.
The chingadera.
Yeah. The chingadera. My mom, whenever she doesn't know what it's called, that's what
find it.
Yeah.
Find it. Or I'm gonna kick your ass.
Yeah. Daddy-daughter dates are very important, right? You go to a movie, you go to a park, you can go on a cruise, stuff like that. You went and showed your daughter a memorial of hardships. Speaking of hardships, Zoot Suit Riots, 80th anniversary as of this time and as of the recording of this podcast. You took your daughter out to go visit. How do you explain that to a toddler, a 3-year-old, right? And why I'm gonna play devil's advocate. Why would you take your daughter to go highlight something that was supposed to be or is pretty bad?
It was painted as bad. We were described as hoodlums, as criminals by the media. I had a pop-up. I did a pop-up and wanted to display some art. I used some photography by a gentleman named Art Meza, who on Instagram,
He's on your wall.
who has his page is called Chicano Soul. And there was this beautiful photograph of these homies standing in front of a lowrider, shirtless, tattooed, their face, their neck, their entire torso. And so many people look at that photo and see criminal, see gangster, sees negativity. I see my tios. I see my cousins. I see myself. I don't think that I had to explain anything to Frida. There was danza mexica. There was Aztec dance. I don't have to explain to her what that is because corre en su sangre. You know, it's in her blood. You know, my family comes from, I believe, because we're detribalized, right? We don't know exactly what we are. But I believe Yaqui roots. And so I don't have to explain the tambor to my daughter. She actually loves it and will stand at the front of the circle watching the danza mexica, watching them do the danza del permiso, you know, calling the four corners. And she's dancing and loves it. And actually at this Zoot Suit Riot Memorial cruise, they had an opening ceremony and the dancers walked away and walked in between the lowriders and started dancing over there. And she followed them and stood there and drank her horchata and was watching it and walked up to the hubcaps and said, "Oh, look, a mirror," and was looking at herself in the mirror, right?
That's super cute.
And walking up and down and, "Daddy, why are so many stranger dangers talking to you?" I was like, you know, they know the hat company. They want you to make a hat? Oh. Like, yeah. And that was really awesome too, that her seeing folks come up, shake my hand, thank you for what you're doing. I think that Pachuco Supply is great and your voice and all that. So getting those congratulatory things in front of my daughter, though she's 3 years old, who knows what she'll remember, but you'd be surprised, right? But I don't think I had to explain anything to her. It's in her blood, I believe.
Right. I mean, I believe things like that as well. I mean, why does certain things feel the way they do when, you know, you see Aztec dancers, you see lowriders, you see, why does this feel so right? Why does it feel so good?
When I discovered Aztec Dance, I was driving around in an Impala and was probably on my way to not do something so positive. And I was about 16 years old. And I hear tutum, 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 tutum. It's like a party. And so I started getting closer to tutum, 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 tutum. And then I started smelling copal in the air. I'm like, I took a deep breath and it made my, you know, when you have anxiety and you take a deep breath and it washes away for whatever reason, maybe you took a medication that you need or whatever it is, took a drink of cold water and that anxiety washes away. I smelled that copal, it went into my nose and then into my lungs and I breathed out and it was calm. And this is danza mexica. And so I joined the Calpuli, the dance group.
Wow.
And it was one of those things that just called me from across the neighborhood, across the neighborhood. It called me.
Wow. So this is in Anaheim?
It was actually in Fullerton, but yes, I grew up in Orange County. Right. I was living in Anaheim at the time, but I was driving around in Fullerton.
So just the experience of drums, smell, so sound, smell, and it all just clicked. It's just, this feels good. Yeah. This feels right. I need to join this. I need to be a part of this.
Learning about your roots, you always, as someone who grew up Mexican American or Chicano or even Mexican, you know, when I was a kid, I would just call myself Mexican. You learn about Pancho Villa, you learn about Emiliano Zapata, you learn about Benito Juarez, but then you also learn about Mayahuel and the Aztec calendar and like those little things. And then so seeing the lowriders with their murals or their paintings of a fully feathered Aztec dancer, a warrior. Seeing the Calpulli dancing, it was like, yeah, this is where it is. We're still here.
I know you're far away from this because Frida's so young.
Yeah.
But traditional education doesn't seem like it suited you well. No. So you're like, fuck this. I'm going to go learn my own shit. Because you seem well educated, but it seems like you did it yourself. Do you think that traditional education will be and is important in a child's life now? Or do you think like your parents, you're like, I don't want this life for you. I want this to be better for you, right?
Yeah.
Do you think like that with Frida when it comes to education and thought? Because I mean, you're very successful, and you're pretty knowledgeable and aware of who you are and what you're trying to do. But you didn't finish school.
No.
Do you think that if you would have finished school, do you think you probably could have done this? And would you want that for your daughter?
This was the road I chose. I'm always looking at decisions that I've made, and what if I didn't get a tattoo on my face? What if I didn't get tattoos all over my neck? What if I would have just went to school? What if I would have applied myself? La cagué? Did I? Did I mess up? I don't know. I don't know how much different it would be. Un chingo de ganas tenía always. Like I was always going to work hard. And certainly with a better education, I guess I would be further. I don't know. Who knows? But when it comes to the decision of whether I'm going to force or really, really strongly recommend, whatever word you want to use or phrase, Frida to go to traditional schooling, well, I'm not sure.
But people with money have that opportunity, right? Like no public school, we're going to put them in private school, Montessori school.
Well, that's one thing that we're not blessed with. I think that I don't have those opportunities. I didn't have those opportunities growing up. And hopefully I can work hard enough to give those opportunities to my daughter.
At the very least, the options.
At the very least, the options of that. I don't know. My wife, Cynthia, is really leaning towards homeschooling.
Really?
Yeah. Really leaning towards homeschooling and that sort of path.
Right.
But I've thought about, what am I not going to be able to buy for myself? And how hard am I going to have to work? Yeah. How hard am I going to have to work to get this baby into private school?
Right.
I don't know.
You're almost there.
Yeah. Frida is so advanced at her age. Very, very, very smart, very quick.
Preschool? Is she interactive like that or no?
She is. She's in preschool. Okay. Yeah, she's in preschool right now. And so
social. She's in there socially.
Yeah.
And she's learning other things as well. But
that's the thing is I want her to be social, and you don't get that from homeschooling. Or I guess the idea is, I don't know too much about homeschooling to know that for a fact you don't get that right. That sort of social interaction.
Right.
But I'm assuming that it's not as social as going to a school with a large classroom. But then how much energy does the teacher have for your son or daughter when there's 16, 20, 25 other kids?
30, 40 if you're in public school. Yeah, for sure.
So,
but that's a toughie, because you look at, I didn't finish college. I went to community college on a 2-year plan. I went for 3 years and dropped out. So I did not, I don't like a fucking loser. I'm doing terrible, pretty shitty. But it makes me question, my fiance Nicole is phenomenal. She's amazing. She's beautiful. She's passionate. But she also was, locked in and smart enough and worked hard enough to get her PhD in school education, right? Or in school psych, through the School of Education. Those are two different, avenues. And I think about it all the time.
Yeah.
What's the route that I should put my kid through? I have this decision to make now.
Yeah.
I'm the one that's guiding this kid.
We've been thinking about homeschooling,
Right.
and that seems like a viable option, but then also an alternative education. I have friends that went to, I'm not sure what this type of schooling is, but where there's different ages. Is that Montessori? No, right?
No, I'm not sure. I wish Nicole was here.
Yeah.
This is why we can't have this. Yeah, I know. We're nothing without our partners.
I'll talk about hats.
Yeah.
No,
I'm going to do a podcast.
Yeah. But traditional schooling, in my experience, was not a positive experience. I had teachers be so cruel to me when I was young, and I just wanted them to like me. But I never had a chance to, because I'm not sure, I was never diagnosed with a learning disability or anything like that. But traditional schooling and paperwork and math and everything was so very difficult for me. But I was also in this 30 student classroom where who even knew I was falling behind until it was too late, until I was standing in front of the teacher and she was crumpling up my paper and throwing it in the trash and saying, all of your work looks like garbage. And so that was a slap, across the head when I experienced that. But then how could I blame the teacher? I was so buried in that class between so many kids. Who has time to check in on every individual one? So then do I want to risk Frida going through that?
That's a tough one. Yeah. That's tough. But we have plenty of time.
Yes.
to go through it. Yes. It's super slow.
Yeah.
As fast as it's going, it's super slow.
Hardly discernible.
Right. I guess you're right. I mean, the idea of giving your kid an opportunity is probably the best situation, I would think. You can't resolve this. I mean, everybody has different avenues, and there's freedoms to do it, No. And there's means now, right? Like, success gives you more options, I think, right?
I want to raise her in a way that I want to be obviously, like raising someone's, sounds like cattle. I want to be an example of being able to make your own decisions and being strong-willed. Being an example is the most important thing. I could sit here and say, you have to do this, you have to do that, this is the way you have to live a perfect life. And if Frida sees that daddy's, drinking a little too much, or is depressed, or is lazy, whatever it is, undisciplined with his diet, all of those things, if I'm not an example of that, then how can I expect her to be anything different? Right. So I think that a great deal of working on myself has been a part of me raising her, or I could use it raising, but
cattle.
Yeah, raising cattle. A part of this parenting experience has been working on myself.
I think you're doing it for the better.
Yeah.
I mean, successes that you have coming that we've talked about, that we will not talk about. I'll let you do that on your own accord.
Yeah.
I mean, some people will listen. I mean, you have 136,000 followers on Pachuco Supply, and then 16K on your personal. I think people will be aware as a creative, as a business owner, an entrepreneur, but also as a partner, but more so for me as a dad.
Yeah.
But yeah, congratulations to you. I appreciate you. I appreciate this time.
Thank you.
But before we go, the last thing you got to do is you and your wife are pretty smart. Your daughter's going to be smart. she's going to find this podcast later on. What is one thing you want to leave her message-wise? I want you to at this point, this is an opportunity to tell your daughter something now at this point that you want her to find and want her to know when she finds this in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years.
Frida, I want you to know that being a father isn't easy, and that every waking moment, every extra hour of work I'm putting in is for you. I want to be someone that you're proud of, and I hope that I am someone that you are proud of. I value my relationship with you more than anything, and I value your happiness more than my own life. And anything that I could do to make sure that you live a happy life, I will do it without thinking about it. And I love you.
Awesome. Thanks, dude. Thanks for being on the podcast.
Thank you.
Special thanks to our guests and listeners. Feel free to reach out on all our ads, suggest some topics, leave some feedback, or just drop a hello. Remember, you're never alone, Dad. This has been the Creative Dad Pod.